What a blessing it is for me to be with author Barbara Ketchum today. I'm so excited to talk about her book. It's called Driving Timmy's Car, which is why I got goofed up there. Barbara, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Why don't you tell the listeners some things about yourself and let's just get this thing going.
Okay. Well, I'm 65, so I'm getting a late start in this game. Retired physical therapist. Actually started my career as a teacher, a middle school teacher, 6th, 7th grade, English, health, PE, and science. Enjoyed my career as a physical therapist. Ended up into forced retirement in 2020 because not only of COVID, but I was diagnosed with an incurable cancer.
Oh.
So during that time, though, I was so blessed. The Lord was with me every step of the way. I've made a great recovery. I'm in complete remission right now.
Nice.
I had started this dream of writing a book 30 years ago and would write a little bit and stop, write a little bit and stop because I was so busy. I have 2 kids and now I have 2 daughters and 7 grandchildren. And the full-time physical therapy job I had kept me busy, and I've got so many hobbies. And so writing the book was never my priority. It was just a dream. But when 2020 hit, and after I recovered pretty well from cancer, I had time. So in my acknowledgments in my book, I said, cancer has given me more than it's taken away.
Isn't it amazing how God works that way?
It is. It is. I mean, and I've always, even working in the field of physical therapy, when I would rehab someone's, say, total knee, I would tell them your rehab is as much between your ears as it is anywhere else. It's a mindset.
Absolutely.
And I've known people who have gotten just even I'm not that any cancer is minor, but a very curable, treatable cancer diagnosis, and they just literally fall apart. And mine's stage 4, which most blood cancers are diagnosed at stage 4. But from the get-go, I'm like, I know where I'm going, and I'm going to just turn it over to God and let Him take care of me. And being during COVID, that was not the best time to get diagnosed with cancer.
Absolutely.
Because they would not let anyone in the hospital with me. When my husband would have to take me to the ER, they would bring a wheelchair out because I was so weak I couldn't walk, and wheel me in, and he would sit in the car all day. I mean, it was in the heat of summer, Arkansas humidity, that he would just keep his air conditioner running until he found out that I was going to be okay, and then he finally would go home. But I always say I was in the hospital alone when the doctor came in and gave me my diagnosis, but I was never alone.
No, absolutely. You and I have a couple of connections. I was a middle school teacher as well. And then my mom passed away actually from leukemia at the age of 69. So we have some connections here.
Yeah, we do.
So tell us, I love reading about the inspiration. What ended up happening, just so you listening, Barbara's website's not really up and running at this point right now. So she's going to try to work that out. But I'm assuming you're on Facebook, so we can have people connect with you on Facebook.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing. So there'll be some connections there anyway. But so I asked Barbara to send me some information that I might have found on her website. And she sent me a lot of information about driving Timmy's car. And I love the inspiration behind this book. And I noticed you've got a little car behind you. Is that a little Mustang?
It is.
Okay.
I've got a great story about that. If we have time, I'll tell you about the little car behind me.
So tell us about driving Timmy's car and some of the inspiration that you drew to get that book.
All right. We moved to where we currently live in 1987. It's a mid-sized town in central Arkansas, just 20 miles outside of Little Rock. And go back 1987. Everywhere I went in town, I would see this older couple driving I'm not a car expert, but I've always loved Mustangs. So I assumed it was somewhere between a 1965, 1967 Ford Mustang. I mean, I would go to the grocery store and there they would be, post office and there they would be. And of course, my little girls were in the car with me, but I would talk to them and I would say, wonder why those old people are always driving that cool car around. And I started thinking, well, maybe it belonged to their son. And maybe something happened to that son. And then I see him again, I'm thinking about it a little bit more. I'm like, wow, maybe he went to Vietnam and didn't come back. And that's all that they've got left of him. And I mean, I just started building on that little idea until I had this big story in my head.
That's amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
that's why people draw inspiration from so many different places. But I love that it's kind of like God stuck it in your face and kept showing it to you, going, look, Barbara, look, I keep showing it to you. Why are you not looking?
Well, that is so true. And people have asked me, are you going to write another book? And I said, I don't know. This one was literally given to me. And I didn't want to say that when I was pursuing an agent because it sounded so cliche, but it really, really was. I mean, and as a physical therapist, when I would be working with patients, and I've always learned, like, if you're massaging someone's neck or back, or spending much time with them in a quiet one-on-one room, not out in the gym area, you start talking about so many different subjects, and they'll tell you so many neat things about their life, and they'll ask you about yours. And so many times the subject of books would come up, or, oh, I have this dream of writing a book. And they would say, well, tell me about it. And so I would, and I didn't want to give like everything away in case I ever did. I wanted to read a book, and every time they're like, oh, that's an awesome story. You really need to do that. You really need to do that. And then the really coolest thing that happened with a patient, I was working on her. It was her upper back, neck. She was laying on the table. I'd done some treatments on her. And Where the Crawdads Sing was the #1 selling book at the time. So we were discussing that book and how much we loved it. I said,
Love that book.
oh, it's amazing. So I said, oh, I've got a dream. I'm going to write a book. She's like, tell me about it. And so I start telling her about it. And all of a sudden, she just froze up. Like, I mean, held her breath. And I thought, are you okay? I mean, what have I done? And she looks up at me and she says, you just told my story. She said, I got pregnant as a high school student and I had to give my baby away.
Wow.
And so she read the book after I wrote it. And I'm not I just like as a beta reader.
Right.
And she said, oh, it was perfect. She said, you got, and I acknowledged her in the credits too, because she gave me that emotional part that I would have not had. It was like, it was almost like I lived the story through her. So
I noticed you don't have it on Kindle Unlimited. Is there a reason you didn't do Kindle Unlimited?
I'm going to.
Oh, good.
I just haven't done it yet. This has been such a fast-paced thing, and I'm so unfamiliar with the whole process. We talked earlier about why some of the reasons I chose self-publishing, and not having someone really to mentor me. I'm just like, okay, is this a good idea? Is this a good idea? But I am definitely going to put it on Kindle Unlimited.
The only reason I say that is because I had a conference with somebody just last week talking about the self-publishing and KU and how, and I tell people all the time, because a lot of people believe, and I believed this at one time, if you get a book on Kindle Unlimited, you're cutting the author out of pay. The reality is you make more money, probably more money will be made on that KU than you'll make any other way. Because
yes, I've learned to understand that. I've done enough research that I'm like, okay, I was under that first impression too, that I'm just giving my work away, but you're not. You get credit.
You get credit, and that credit can usually, from what he told me, is I probably could get 50% of my royalties could come from KU alone. Because a lot of people will pick it up, they're already paying for it, and they're like, well, I'll get, they'll get books they normally may not pay for.
Right.
So I will admit that I'm frugal. I like being able to get my books on Kindle Unlimited.
Same here.
So you have gone through so much, and you've got a lot of stuff going on in your life with your grandkids and all that's happening. Say you're like right now you need to be marketing your book. I'm assuming your book's been out for about 4 months. Is that correct?
That is correct.
What do you do for marketing? And if you don't have a website, do you have a newsletter? Which if you probably don't have a newsletter.
I don't have a newsletter. I do a Facebook mostly, Instagram a little bit. It's had decent sales, but it's just been local friends, friends of friends, people recommending it. I've attended local author book club signings. I've had a couple of book signings for myself that, sold 30, 40 books, which is not great, but it's a start. And then I had a awesome thing happen. I don't know, I'm sure you are, especially being in Tennessee, you probably are familiar with Susanna B. Lewis.
Oh, yeah.
Well, she promoted it one day.
Wow.
Yeah. And I got some really good sales for about a week or so after she did that.
Nice.
So,
yeah. it's interesting. You were talking about meeting Deborah Rainey, who was influential for you. And I met Deborah Rainey in my first time I went to a conference, which would have been back in 2008, I think. I met her at a conference in Northern California, and then ran into her ACFW, ran into her at Blue Ridge Christian Writers Conference, ran into her everywhere. But she is just the most phenomenal encourager when it comes to authors, you know, and she's real. So,
Yes.
and I know she was a blessing to you and it was instrumental in some of the, like your cover, her husband did your cover for you.
Yeah, and I love it. I mean, that's been very well received. Everybody that sees it loves the cover. Interesting story about the title of the book. And I attended Blue Ridge and I signed up for a course. I'm not going to even say the lady's name, so I don't want to offend anybody. But I signed up for a class and I found the classroom and no one was there. I double check, make sure I'm in the right room, correct room. I sat there. The woman walks in. No one else has signed up for the course.
Oh no.
Yeah. So, but I'm thinking, oh, this is a good thing. I'm going to get one-on-one for an hour with this lady. So we talked about my book, and she hated the title. She thought it was the most ridiculous title. And she said, why would any woman want to read a book called Driving Timmy's Car? I just said, I don't know. I wanted to be respectful because she was a lot more knowledgeable in the industry than I am even now. But I wanted to say, well, what woman will read a book called Where the Crawdads Sing? Because it was a #1 seller at that point. But I just sit there humbly and just like, I don't know. And that was another thing. I did not want the title of that book changed. And everybody that's read it has said, no, it had to be called Driving Timmy's Car.
Well, it does. I first hear it, it sounds like a kid's book.
Yes, it does.
And the cover, I don't know if you have the book with you because we'll put it on YouTube, but the cover, it's a beautiful cover, but it has that, it reminds me of one of my kids had picture books when they were little. So it kind of goes along with that. So I think that's probably people are trying to give you good advice. However, what God puts on your heart, he puts on your heart for a reason.
Yeah.
And, being true to that, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks of your title. I was drawn to that. I thought that was a really interesting title and it makes you want to delve in. And then when you just read the back cover blurb, you're going to see exactly why this title is so important.
Yeah. And I thought, when I saw, I'm going to grab it. I actually have a copy somewhere. Probably backwards. But, I had in my mind, because it's Driving Timmy's Car and it's got a happy ending and they're driving away in Timmy's car.
Such a beautiful cover.
Oh, I love that Ken Rainey did a great job. But I wanted something different. It seems like all the books that I go to the bookstore, I don't go to bookstores very often anymore, but I still go, or Walmart, or it's on Target shelf. They all look alike.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted something that would stand out. And I thought that stood out. So
well, I think it's beautiful. The covers, the cover, the colors, everything that blends together is beautiful. You got to tell us a story about your little Mustang back there.
Oh, the little glass Mustang. So I've got 2 best friends that also inspired my book and listened to me dream for years and years. When I released the book, I released it on my birthday. I said it was going to be a birthday present to myself. And I had my first book signing in the lobby of our church on June 3rd. And June 3rd is a great date for me. It is my wedding anniversary. But we lost my mother in 2020 on June 3rd. She had been diagnosed with cancer. 30 days later, I got diagnosed with cancer, but she was supposed to have a little minor surgery. And the doctors did not see that on any of the MRIs or CT scans that the little tiny tumor was wrapped around an artery. So when they removed it, they cut her artery and she basically bled to death during surgery. Totally unexpected. She had just turned 85 the day before or 2 days before. And she was still push mowing her own grass. So anyway, June 3rd is a special day. It's our anniversary. And in hindsight, I kind of wish I hadn't done my book signing on that date, but I thought, it is our anniversary, but it'll give us something else to celebrate besides thinking about my mom's death. My two best friends from Tennessee, one lives in Chattanooga, one lives in Dyersburg, had driven down for the weekend. We had a little girls' weekend. June 3rd was on a Monday night. Well, my husband went to the florist to buy me flowers. And one of the girlfriend from Chattanooga, she's an interior designer. So she was going to decorate the church lobby. We had all these plans and stuff. So my husband did get the flowers, but while he was at our local flower shop, the woman there asked him, so is this for a special occasion? And he smiled real big and said, yeah, it's for our 46th wedding anniversary. But my wife's written a book and she's having a book signing tonight over at the church. And the lady's like, well, what's the book about? So he starts telling her it's about this old Mustang. And she just holds her hand up and says, wait a minute. And she goes back in the back of the not the salon, but the florist, and she grabs this cute little Mustang. And it's made to hold a little bouquet of flowers. But anyway, he got it. And we set it out the night of the book signing. It was just the sweetest thing. And what were the chances? I mean, who wants a thing of flowers in a Mustang? But she had that. And it fit perfectly. And we're like, my girlfriends, they knew what was going on because he told them. So when he's giving it to me, they're filming it. I'm crying. It was so sweet. But again, a little God wink.
Well, that's pretty special. You must have been a child bride. Goodness, 46 years. You're only 6.
We got married when I was 12. No kidding.
Okay, I can do the math. I know. I can do the math. You're 19?
Yes.
Yeah. Just turned
1 week. I was 19 and 1 week to the day. Needless to say, my mother was not happy.
Well, you know what? It worked. I mean,
it did.
You guys are a testament to a good marriage because that doesn't always happen, So
that is true. I married a great man and he has been my rock these last 4 years for sure.
God has blessed you. I mean, even going through the things you've gone through. I was just reading I read the devotional Streams in the Desert. Have you ever read that book before by L.B. Cowman?
I have not.
Such a good devotional. I talk about it often, but it was a compilation of devotions that L.B. Cowman, I can't remember what her first name is. Her husband was in missionary, and she was with him as a missionary. And after he died, she took care of him for 6 years as he was dying. And she compiled all these amazing devotionals from people like Charles Spurgeon and George Matheson, and the names go on, and some from just the Sunday School Times or this and that. But I read this morning one on suffering, and it was talking about when we go through such suffering to the point where we are surrender everything we have and everything we are into the hands of Jesus, then we don't worry about the things of this world anymore because we've already been to the worst and we know that he holds us in the palm of his hand. And I thought, I want that devotion, that surrender, but I don't want the suffering.
Yeah.
Often entails in order for you to get to that point. And I know when my mom was going through cancer, when she had her leukemia, it drew her closer where before she couldn't even get out of bed anymore unless she was getting a blood transfusion or her chemotherapy. And she had her Bible in her hand all the time. That was the one book that she kept in her hand and was reading through all the time. And I know that I saw that suffering and when she died, at 69, she was still very young. There was no fear. She just knew where she was going.
Yeah.
Either. She just said, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired, and I'm ready to go be with Jesus. So, that's, but you don't get through this life without suffering. You just don't, you're
part of life.
It is, we all go through it. So, so you don't have another story in you at this point. You're waiting for God to give you one.
Yes, kind of. The second year I attended Blue Ridge, the first agent that I talked to, I wanted to talk to her again, but she was not there. So I picked out a couple of more. And the first lady I talked to on the second trip, after I told her a little bit about driving Timmy's car, she asked if I had a series in mind. And I said, well, no, not yet, because I've not finished this one, And she turned me off like a water spigot. So I'm like, well, I don't know if I want to do this.
I mean, the problem is, and I see this to an extent, is that, especially for an agent, you know, you can go to a small publishing house and not need an agent, but the big houses you have to have an agent. They won't even look at you. The
Right.
problem is if you don't have multiple books, they want to make money. They're not going to make money off one book.
Right.
And unless you're going to be a moneymaker, they have no interest in you. So as harsh as that sounds, as they're in the, and there are a lot of these big publishing houses are not doing so well because so many people like you are self-publishing now. And I'm going into the self-publishing route. So a lot of these big houses, even the small houses, people are just tired of giving control over, and they're doing it on their own. And it's pretty, from what I understand, it's fairly easy to do because they're not marketing for you anyway. I think
Right.
part of the book, the whole book career is the marketing. I detest the marketing part.
Oh, yeah, I'm learning that quickly. I told someone not long ago that I thought writing was hard. Writing was the easy part.
It is
The
easy.
marketing is showing, yeah, I'm learning that the marketing is the difficult part. But getting back to the sequel, yes, I do have an idea. Got it. And then I have ideas for other books, but it's so funny. So many people come up to me like, oh, I'm so invested in these characters. I want more. And, or, you know, when's your next book coming out? So now I feel this pressure. Like, I was really worried about this one, and what if it embarrassed me or my family? But now I'm like, can I? You know, not that this is a Pulitzer Prize or a New York Times bestseller, no. But I'm like, can I live up to their expectations now? You know, I don't want to write a second book and it be awful. So, and my husband said, I know you. You would sit there and perfect it. It's not going to be awful, but
Well, and you know, a series, I was actually with the Steve Lobby agency before I ended up going off and doing the smaller publishing house. And he gave me really good advice. He says, I would not, and he said Deborah Rainey was one of his clients at that time. And he said, I would do what Deborah Rainey does. I would not tie your book to characters, but tie it to a theme, a place, you know, where they all take place in the same town, maybe, or it does, or a theme like a car. It could be the Mustang, whatever. It does not have to be the same characters, because then you are perpetuating these characters, and after a while, some people might get bored with them, or you can sprinkle them in a little bit. But that, I thought that was very good advice. All my books
yeah,
are based on a place, not necessarily the people, you know,
yeah,
but
that is a good idea.
yeah. So you can do that without having to you know, create bring your people in the same, or a side character, or a character that might have been in that book, and then you go into their story. So there are ways to do it without being tied into that specific character.
Right. And I'm on the avid readers of Christian fiction Facebook page. In fact, that's where I saw your post. But someone the other day said something about, can someone please write a book about cancer that's not bad, that's not death. And I've always heard, write what you know. So of course, my next book's probably going to have someone surviving an ordeal with cancer. And I didn't just go through chemo, I had to have a stem cell transplant. So that was an ordeal within itself. And so that would probably be part of the next book.
Well, I do know an author that actually worked for the same publisher I did, that did write a story. And I can't remember the name of it now. Her first book had a young woman with cancer who survived the cancer. So, but she had them have this woman was also abused by her husband and the cancer, and it was so dark I couldn't get through it. I just,
Wow.
you know, sometimes you need, I don't know, doing the cancer, great, but adding a little levity in there, a little humor, you know, because I don't know about you, but that's how my daughter had a traumatic brain injury, was in a coma, and we went through the whole thing of her having to relearn everything from the ground up. And humor is what got us through, you know,
Right.
humor, having that humor in there. So I think that helps a lot. It helps alleviate that. You know, it's good when you can get him into this intense and then break him of it for a little bit and then get him back, you know, so it's not constant intenseness, I think, is what I'm trying
Yeah.
to say, you know.
Yeah, I think I tried to do that with driving Timmy's car, and I was afraid I didn't have enough humor in it. But people have told me, like, no, I laughed and I cried and I
Yeah.
laughed and I
And
cried.
they
And I'm like,
love
well,
that.
good.
They love that. I had somebody to one of my books. I'm laughing on one page, the next one I'm crying, and I'm laughing again. And that it gives them that full experience, you know.
Right. And I know that's the type of book I like to read.
Yeah. I like humor. Humor is important. Well, Barbara, this has been such a pleasure, and I'm hoping if you do another book, you'll come back on and share that one with us. And I've just really enjoyed our conversation and learning about your story and your inspiration. And you are an inspiration for
Well,
people.
thank you.
Well, I can't write a book. I'm like in my 50s. It's, but you can.
You
You're
can't. And I saw it may have been a podcast and maybe one that you did, but some lady said the same thing, that she started writing in her 60s. And she said, if I have any advice, write sooner. But life gets busy, it's hard, especially when you've got teenagers going 10 different directions. And I admire these women that get up early in the morning or stay up late at night and write. I couldn't stay that focused.
The reality is, you, like you said, you write what you know. And until I went through a lot of personal life-changing tragedies, I didn't know so much, my books were, my idea of a book would have been pretty dull. You have to
Yeah.
live some to get that depth of emotion in a story. So this has been a pleasure. I wish you the best on Driving Timmy's Car. I love the cover. I love the storyline. You guys need to check it out. It's on Amazon. I will put that link in the show notes. I will put Barbara's Facebook link in the show notes so that everybody can connect with her and follow her on Amazon. Thank you so much, Barbara.
Thank you. God bless you. Have a good day.
You too.